What up, fam? So today I'm here with Erick Godsey, who is straight up on the front lines working with me and my team. One of the smartest and most insightful dudes I know. He's like partly like the office team psychologist here, or it's like Kyle might be like the office shaman, like the office spiritual psychologist. Yeah. You got everybody pulling cards. You got them coming to you with ideas. Yeah. Potentially maybe encouraging microdosing. I don't know.
Yes. Yes.
But man, it's been a fucking real pleasure to have you as a part of this team. And we can get into the story of how that came about at some point, perhaps. But just having somebody with your skill set and ability on the front lines, helping me answer all of the comments and questions that I get that I don't have time to dig in there and get to, and filtering those up to me, and then allowing that whole process to really continue to, to serve everybody. And I know a lot of you who've written on Instagram have probably gotten a response from this
Eric
man.
From the AM team. That's me.
This is him.
Yeah.
This is him. So welcome, man.
Yeah, man. It is an honor. And it's my pleasure to be here, truly. And it's surreal. The first podcast I ever heard in my life was the first time that you went on Joe Rogan right after Chris died and you became Aubrey, and you shared that story about doing ayahuasca. So full circle.
Yeah. Pretty rad. So I wanted to talk to you. As I said, you're on the front lines. You're talking to, our people, the tribe all day.
For sure.
What are some of the common themes that people are coming to you with? What are some of the sticking points, the areas that they're having trouble, the things that they want to know more about?
I think the most common one, and these are probably the people that are the least inhibited to ask their questions, are guys wanting to know how you got to where you are with your body. Like that's like the most common thing probably in the DMs are dudes who shouldn't be sending selfies, but who are, about them working out and asking, how can I be like Aubrey? So that's probably level one.
How many dude selfies do you get, Gods?
I've gotten more in the last 6 months than all the girls I know have gotten in their life. And I don't know what I did or what energy I put out to attract the dude selfies.
Well, it's my energy, obviously. Yeah, obviously, I'm attracting a lot of male selfies.
Yes.
And what is the ratio of male selfies to female selfies that we're doing?
1 to 0.
I'm really killing it. This is what I'd always dreamed. Yeah. I always dreamed that I would create a platform where I'd just have dudes endlessly
for the good of all
sending me
and most of the all are dudes
photos. I'm fucking crushing it. Young Chris Marcus would be proud of what I've accomplished so far.
I think the discernment amongst the women is they know not to open a DM conversation with a selfie. Dudes don't have that discernment.
They just think like a good ab pic, and we're gonna be
of
bros.
Course Aubrey will respond to my abs. Guys, it's not working.
Oh man, that's pretty funny. Well, it's an interesting question, because it's like, I don't have a transformation story. Like this has been a consistent journey for me since I was really young. Since I'll post those old pictures of me playing basketball. I was leaner then, but then in college, I started adding muscle and continued to add muscle, and have been pretty much the same weight within 15, 20 pounds, and same body fat within 1% to 2%. My whole life. Yeah. And it's just been a consistent application of that. But what's interesting to me is, like, I think that my mind is such a nightmare in a lot of ways. It's so difficult to wrangle that like just taking care of my body, like that feels like a finite system. It's like, oh, this is easy. Like, I know what to do here. Like, this is a way that even when everything is chaos and everything is crazy in my head, I can do something to my body that I know will yield results.
Yeah, and so it's a way to tame your mind.
It is a way to tame my mind, exactly. And it's also something that like helps make me feel good. You know? And it has immediate results, because these things that I'll track down in my psyche, I could go on a 6-month journey tracking something down and not realize what it is, and then forget it, and then get sidetracked and find myself depressed or anxious and not know the way out. And it's very non-linear. It's kind of going all over the place. But with the body, it's like, stress and recover, repeat, stress and recover.
Yeah.
And when I'm, mentally stressed, that's when I would do it the most. Like, I remember I was in Australia and I was totally fucked up about my girlfriend, who decided to stop seeing me and start seeing some football player for like Pittsburgh Steelers or something like that. And I think I've told this story before. So I like looked up his combine stats and was trying to like beat his bench press record from the combine. Like that's why she loved him and didn't love me.
For sure.
It's because he could
It was
bench
his
press
40.
more than me. Yeah, it was his 40. I knew I couldn't beat his 40, but I thought his 225 rep test was suspect. And I got these really short arms and I'm good at benching. So so that's what I was doing. I was walking around Australia in this mental fog. But, you know, my way out was to go to the gym at University of Queensland and just put on Pantera, This Love, and just press as much as I could.
Yeah. So step one, have demons.
And I guess solve your demons in a positive, like tame your demons in a positive way. Like other people have those same demons and they'll go, all right, drinking and food, you know, and that's the way to tame the demons.
That's how you amplify the demons.
That's the way you're going to amplify them. And this one not necessarily wasn't doing like long-term benefit for him. Maybe slightly, just because the more confident you are in your body, it helps you be more confident in your mind. But it's at least finding the escapes that are helpful. And I think that's just been it for me. Like this is the way out of a troubled day or a tough situation, or you know, if something in the open relationship is failing, or something in business is failing, or something else is failing. Like the gym is a refuge. Yeah, it's simple. You go in there, you do what you know you need to do, and you come back. You'll feel better immediately, and the long-term benefits will be there. You know, and so to me, it's like the easiest thing to do because it's a finite system. All you have to do is show up and do it. Yeah. You know, it's not how necessarily. Right. Yeah. It's just, will you?
And it seems like what you're doing is make your life hard enough where it drives you to the gym. Like if your life is easy and it's not chaotic in your mind, you might not have the motivation to go work out. But like doing the open relationship, running a fucking company, and then trying to do all the things on the side with psychedelics, like you are pushing yourself to the gym every single day. Yeah. And so maybe people out there who are trying to find the motivation, like challenge yourself enough outside of the gym where you recognize that the gym is the place where you can go and hone your mind a little bit. Yeah. And because a lot of us are lazy, you know, and like seeing the open relationship stuff now, like up front in person, like that's a second job that you've willingly chose to have that challenges you in a way that most people like, they desperately try to find their wife or their husband so they can shut down that part of their development because it's way too much stuff, you know? And so do a lot of hard shit and they'll drive you to the gym.
Yeah. And it's a good way to look at it. And then just start the practice of fixing your problems with positive solutions. Yeah. You know, so whether that's
daily
gym, yoga, meditation, like what are you doing to solve the problems? Is it pure escapism, which is going to exacerbate and throw gasoline on the fire? Or is it some kind of positive process? For sure. And I've just gotten used to the positive process. Not that I don't have certain self-destructive patterns that'll occasionally creep in.
We all do.
But, you know, but for the most part, I know what works the best, you know, and it's just, that's the shit that works the best. Yeah. And then from there, like, what do? Well, I try to stress myself maximally, you know, on a pretty regular basis. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't do either. They'll kind of get in there, they'll fuck around, they'll do a little cardio, they'll do a little weights, they'll be kind of on their phone. Like at a regular intervals, I will push myself to the absolute point of near collapse. You know what I mean? And that's I think another defining characteristic of like how the body works best. Like there's real benefits at the extreme, at the fringe.
And most people don't go there.
No, they don't go there. They don't. And there's ways to do it safely and not safely too. Like you can't go there immediately, but find like for me, sprinting on the curve is a really safe way to do it. Yeah. The curve is that treadmill, it's curved. Like I can really give that thing hell for 5 sprints of 1/10 of a mile. And at the end, I'm just hands on my knees, just like panting. My teeth hurt, like my gums hurt. Like that's
I've never been there.
Yeah. That's one way you do it. Or with the battle rope. And you don't stop when you get fatigued and you get a little hurt. That's when I start using my mind to think about the shit that I'm troubled about. Maybe Whitney's new boyfriend, or maybe, you know, something else that's in my head. And I'm like, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to do this, you know, for all the people that I'm going to help, or whatever motivation I'll need. And I'll keep going until I'm just gritting my teeth. And then the benefits of that will be, you know, you'll really feel those when you get there. So find those safe movements like battle rope, like the curve, and then just go to the extreme.
Yeah. There's this quote by Hunter S. Thompson, and it's that none or almost nobody knows where the edge is, and the only people who have found it have gone over it. And it's just like, yeah. And that reminds me of, so when I heard Joe Rogan talk about this, I've started to do it sometimes, and it's the psychological situation that he does when he's like doing like the bag, and he thinks like, I'm defending my family from death, like from the marauders coming across the like sea to take my family. And he's trying to push himself to the point where he's trying to trigger his primal DNA to fucking defend his family. And a couple of times, like I try to do pull-ups, and I'm like, I'm trying to lift my sister over the ledge of the cliff, so I can do my third pull-up. That's where I'm at.
That's actually something I've played with a lot, and the emotions can get deep. I've taken that far enough where I finish and I'm just like panting and crying and sweating, and like you can really get yourself in a pretty intense state, which feels good. It feels good to exercise that, but you will feel kind of an endorphin drop if you take that really far.
Interesting, yeah.
It's almost like this blood rage that develops, right? Like you're just like, you get blinded, and and I've imagined that same scenario, and I've actually talked about it before, but again, it has to be safe movements. You wouldn't want to do that with like a super heavy squat or a heavy deadlift, because you'll throw your back out, right? Like you need to do that very disciplined. Like, but with the bag or with battle ropes or with a sprint, like you can put yourself in that scenario and then just meter out how deep you want to go with the emotions. Yeah. Because it can go pretty deep, and it's something to play with too. It's like learning the human animal, like finding all of these buttons that you can push to yield that result.
And that actually brings us into the next, a really common theme that I see, that we don't really have a resource yet to send people, but like people who are in the midst of their depression, like they don't know what to do. They don't have the motivation. And like a lot of people think that you personally will reach through, the crowd and fix their thing for them. And the constant advice that I have to give them is like, nobody can do this for you.
Yeah.
I guess for all those types of people that wish they could be fixed by you, which I think is giving up their responsibility and their fate on some level, but how could we help them?
Well, I think that radical responsibility for where you are, I think is really important. And then I think it's understanding the framework, that I think you can start to operate in. And I think one of those frameworks is identifying yourself as the hero, and identifying that there are going to be patches and periods of deep struggle. Sure. And like, that is what defines the hero. Like that's the game we signed up for, with all the monsters and the boss battles and these internal things. And it is the overcoming of these things that actually gives you the character and defines who you are. So instead of it trying to be like, oh, wow, why is this happening to me? Oh, woe is me, I'm depressed. It's like, oh, well, this is the dragon that I have to face right now.
Yeah.
And in the overcoming of this is where my soul is going to be forged in the steel, and, the steel of my soul will be forged in the fire of this depression.
Yeah.
And I think reframing it like that, like, all right, so here's my challenge, and this is what's going to create the adaptation for me. That framework is super important. And that's the kind of warrior archetype, the hero archetype.
Yeah. And I think that anyone who would offer these people the I'll fix it for you, like those are the people you want to stay away from. There's this great story that I just read yesterday, but it's about this boy has a caterpillar, and it goes into its cocoon, and the boy goes to his mom and asks his mom, like, what's going on with the caterpillar? And the mom explains, like, that's how it becomes a butterfly. The child does not have the patience and went in with some small scissors and cut the cocoon a little bit to help the caterpillar become the butterfly. The butterfly comes out of the cocoon and dies. And the child goes to his mom and he's crying. He's like, what happened? What happened? And the mom explained that the resistance of the cocoon, like it's a fine-tuned evolutionary process, that the resistance that the cocoon gives the butterfly is what allows its wings to get the strength to fly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of well-meaning people who want to help other people.
Is that true? Is that real?
Yeah. Yeah.
That really happens with the butterflies?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know it was a metaphor, or if that's some real fucking insectology shit right there.
If Ian was in here, he'd be able to help us with the insects. But I think that there's a lot of well-meaning people who want to help other people, and people who are depressed, who want the help, who want someone to fix it for them. And I think like you wound them when you do that.
Yeah.
And
How dare you?
Exactly.
How dare you rob them of that challenge? You know, how dare you take their ability to be a hero and say, no, you're not a hero. You know, I'll take care of you. I'll be
That's the
hero for both
devouring
of us.
mother
Yeah.
archetype. Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So Freud came up with a lot of crazy shit that we just discard. But one of the things that he came up with that it's still mind blowing, like when you really think about what's going on here. But some parents don't want to be so good that their child goes off and becomes an individual adult. They want their child forever. And so what this type of parent will do is they'll solve all the problems for the child. They'll baby the child. They'll keep the child infant, and then the child won't ever leave when the child becomes an adult. And Freud was basically like, that's a pact that the child and the mother make with each other. And the father can do it too, but it happens more with the mother and if the first child's a son, for reasons that we might not want to get into. But the child and the mother agree.
If it's Freud, it's always something to do with sex.
Yeah, 100%. He wanted to fuck his mom and he projected that onto everybody. You know, there's this funny quote by Jung about his critique of Freud. And he was like, you know, my mom was ugly. Like, that's what Jung said. And so like a lot of what Freud put forward, it just doesn't make sense to Jung. You know, but anyways,
Freud needed to jerk off before he wrote anything.
For sure. And
he's just to check himself.
100%.
Just to make sure he just wasn't horny as he was coming up with his theories.
And what people don't know is right when he like got his degree, like when he was able to be a doctor, cocaine was used and it was legal. And he was giving cocaine to everyone. It was like, oh, this is like helping people. And he was doing cocaine all the time. And then, you know, they started to find, oh, this is highly addictive. He stopped prescribing it, but a lot of people, some historians who have done a lot of reading and work think that he stayed on that cocaine train all the way until the end of his days. And, you know.
So he had that coke dick, so he couldn't even get hard enough to ejaculate. So he was constantly horny all the time. Oh, we're solving a lot of issues here with Freud. But devouring mother, getting back to that shit's on point. Because it can be not only devouring mother, it can be devouring friend, devouring boyfriend, devouring girlfriend. Like anytime you rob someone of the ability to like meet the challenge and overcome it, there's going to be a serious problem.
Yeah, you steal their fate.
And also like that is also the problem with overprescribing these drugs, right? Like if you're going through something, a lot of the research will say that these things are cyclical. They're periodic. They're not like a lifetime. This idea that you have one chemical that's out of balance, you need this thing for the rest of your life because you have a faulty machine. Right. It's not really how it works. Like most of the research says, okay, there's periods of depression, anxiety, these things will come in natural cycles. But if the minute you get to the hard part, and then you inject some third-party fix, whether that's a person or whether that's a pill or whether that's something else outside of the agency of the person going through it, you rob them of the ability to get stronger in resistance and defiance of that thing. And we do it all the fucking time. Yeah. We do it not only with our kids, we do it with but particularly in relationship.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, oh, this is hard. Well, you know, let me make it easy for you.
And we think that that's love. And it's like the opposite of love. It's this weird, like,
it's a very short-term coddling, you know, pandering to comfort at deep long-term cost.
Absolutely.
And we don't have the fucking foresight to see what we're doing.
Yeah. And it's like the thing that you love, you are keeping weak because, you know, like we could go like 8 ways with this, but one of it I think is people are afraid that the people that they love will grow beyond them, you know, and then that they'll leave them. And it's like you're playing a really dirty game unconsciously if you're keeping the person you love as weak as you can and you stay weak. You know, I think the proper response is like, I'm going to help them become the best human they can possibly be. I'm going to elevate myself too, you know? Yeah. And that's so much easier said than done. But it's a weird thing that I see a lot, and I'm guilty of it too. I've done it. I've been the devouring mother, but the father, you know, like in relationships. And then hindsight being like, I kept that person weak because I was weak.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's that you see that a lot, where in that way, or also in the way that people just are insecure about how big their partner can get. You know, like
absolutely.
Whether when they're on fire, they're the first with the bucket of water, not with the gasoline. You know, and that's something that you see a lot of times too. Like they like people in a very narrow band where they feel equivalent, but when they, you know, become that outlier and they break out of it and they're just on fire, you know, then all of those fears of abandonment come in and start to trigger, like, oh, he or she's going to leave me now because look how awesome they are. I can't keep up with them. Rather than that just admiration and that kind of push to fucking kill it even more.
Yeah, to join them in dancing in flames.
Fuck, you know? Yeah. And that's like, when you're in a healthy relationship, that's the beautiful part.
Yeah,
like
you guys elevate each other.
You see your partner just kill it. And then that inspires you, like, fuck yeah. All right, I'm going to go get some now too. Maybe I can't compete with that. Like even this weekend, like we were out, you know, I had a day with Whitney this weekend on Saturday. We watched the fights. It was great. We went upstairs to the club and she was just fucking on fire. And I was just looking at her with just a big ass smile on my face. Like, and I can kind of catch fire in the club too, but there was no way that under any way could I even match like a potential. She was like a supernova that night. And she hits that. And I've had partners who've been able to hit that. Caitlin's sitting over there on the couch. She used to go supernova sometimes. And it's just like the whole world, the whole club is just looking with like tilted eyes and inquisitive face and like a fluttering heart. Like, what the fuck is happening over there? You know, and those moments are the things that actually keep me the most enthusiastic. Like, fuck yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. Now that makes me want to be more badass in whatever I can do. And next time I'm on stage or next time I'm doing a podcast, or I want to bring my best, you know, and that's in the healthy relationship. But you see it all too often in other relationships. You'll see someone catch fire and then the other person's like, holy shit, I'm with a supernova. Let's fucking put the blanket on that thing. Let's get that wet wool over there and keep it contained. Yeah. You know, and that's something that we all have to be mindful of.
And so I think to circle back to people, like if you're in a place and you're reaching out to, you know, someone like Aubrey or specifically to Aubrey, I think the hard truth is that no one can save this or save you for you. There are resources that you can consume to grow and to meet the challenge, but no one can do it for you. And I think like it's so simple, but I think if people really tried to do this, like if you sat down with a piece of paper and you genuinely get quiet and you have the courage to actually listen to what will come up, ask yourself, what am I doing wrong to contribute to where I am right now? You know, and in my experience, an answer will come within seconds. Like there's a thing in each of us that's smarter than everyone else's conscious mind. Mm-hmm. And that thing will talk to you if you try to talk to it. Mm-hmm. You know, and so if you're going through something, don't ask us, ask you. Like get on paper or get quiet, whatever type of technique helps you connect to that. That thing will guide you through the dark night of the soul, not somebody else's conscious mind.
Yeah, that's very wise. And I think that part is, you know, being able to tap into that thing more regularly is the first and most important step one. Like we have to be able to speak to whatever your language wants to call it, your soul, your higher self, your God self, your whatever the names you prefer, like the truth of who you are, you know, essentially. Like being able to tap into that is important now. And then the next step, phase 2, is to start to live as that more often and be that actually in expression.
And you know, it's weird. I think at least one way to amplify the connection to that thing is also the answer to stage 2, which is like, for me, like radically try your best to speak and act your truth. And the more you do that, the more that connection to that self becomes stronger. Mm-hmm. So it's this weird thing that the answer to one is both. You know, like as you start to speak and act your truth, you know, there's this idea in Native American, like psychology, I guess is what I would call it, but really it's their myths. And it's that the men who dream, or like the people who dream in the culture, are the ones that don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And then when they do hear the call, they act on it. So like they do the dance, or they make the art, or they give the speech, and that amplifies their dream life, you know? And so it's almost like as you walk the path and you speak the path, it's like the path becomes more illuminated. You know, it's this weird either or. The answer to is both, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, there is the truth of who we are is beyond fear, right? I mean, it's this infinite source connected to all things, connected to the divine, connected. And this is, you know, getting farther out, you know, in the spiritual metaphysics of like what Paul Selig is talking about, what Ted Dekker is talking about, but something that I think you can very much firsthand experience if you do, you know, a psychedelic journey or do any one of the techniques from shamanic breath work to ecstatic dance. Like you start to feel this presence, this force of life that is in a place beyond fear.
Yeah.
And there's never been a lie that's been told that hasn't been told in fear.
Amen. Yeah.
Right. So like there's no reason for anything but truth when you're beyond fear. And so the act of being in truth is the act of being beyond fear, is the act of being who you really are. You know, so I really think understanding that there's no way to be who you are truly and to know who you are and to not be in truth. It's not possible because
absolutely
the absence of truth is the presence of fear. So, and that's like that's what we have to realize. And holding back your truth is just holding back yourself.
Yeah, your light.
And acknowledging who and what you are, which is I think the real purpose of why we're here. And that's been my kind of recalibration of late for anybody who's read, you know, my newsletter and has been keeping up with me talking about that, like understanding that for most of my life, I was really concerned with what I was doing. Like, what am I going to do? How will my life of doing make me, you know, be worthy of all the gifts and talents and everything that I have? Like, what can I do? Para el bien de todos, for the good of all. What can I do for the good of all?
Right.
And then recalibrating that to like, okay, that's important, yes. But more important is, who can I be? How can I be? What can I be? Can I be my best self? And what does the best self do when you're being, I don't know, it does stuff. It does stuff for the good of all.
Yeah.
Like, but the first most important part is not about the doing. And I would always retreat and run to the doing. Even when I was not being, I was like, well, at least if I'm doing. And again, it was a healthy response to the stress, but it was still an escapist response. Like working out doesn't fix my problems. It's just kind of like a temporary relief. Doing stuff doesn't fix the issues. It's just kind of a temporary relief, some kind of temporary external well, at least I did some shit, even though I'm fucked up in my head right now. At least I was accomplishing some stuff that helped some other people. So I kind of feel better about it.
Yeah.
But even more important is to be that kind of love expressed, like be that individual.
Right.
And then the actions of the individual, once you are there, are going to be awesome. And that's always when I've done my best stuff anyways. It's not when I'm really stressed about the doing. It's when I'm being and then something comes through me that seems to be beyond me. And so really refocusing on just being and knowing that that's enough, and knowing that everybody who I encounter, if they see me in that higher state of being, will be affected by that, you know, in some way.
And I think, so two things that come up. One is, it sounds like the doing is a preoccupation with the goal, and the being is like the Tao. It's the way, it's how you are along the way, which is actually the whole way. Like there is no destination. And when you act in accordance to trying to do the destination, you're constantly in the future. You're not here now doing, being, you know, and like we are human beings, you know, and the other part is the whole truth thing. I find that like we all kind of have the same calibration for when we tell white lies or when we aren't in complete truth. And when we see someone say the thing that we know we won't say because it makes us uncomfortable, like we feel more free witnessing them just be truthful, you know, like, because there's all these things that we think we should feel bad about or should hide or shouldn't share. And people who share that shit, like they kind of give you permission, like, oh, I can actually let my light out and it's not bad, or it's not like showboating,
or let my shadow out.
Yeah. Amen.
You know, like that's the thing. It's showing both sides. It's not pretending to be one or the other.
Yeah.
Like people who like that's true humility. Like true humility is letting people in on your lack of humility. You know what I mean? Like it's not this false humility of, oh, you know, just one play at a time. You know, I'm just thankful for my teammates. Like all right, when that shit's real, like good,
For sure.
good. But every once in a while, I'll be like, I'm the fucking shit. Did you see what I just did?
Yeah, exactly,
Because then
man.
people are like, okay, of course he felt like that.
goes
He
both
had
ways,
he had to have felt like that. You know, and maybe that's a weird example, but whatever the shadow
no,
is,
spot on.
you gotta show, and that's actually being humble. Like being truthful is being humble. Like, oh, here's me being a dick. Here's me being awesome. Here's me, all of the things in between. And guess what? You're the same, you know? And so now we can see each other. And
False
now we can
modesty
actually,
is a lie.
it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie. It's a very polite lie.
Right. Yeah.
But nonetheless, that's not being humble.
Right.
You know, being humble is actually showing your vulnerability and showing like where you aren't humble and where you're a cocky, brash piece of shit. You know, like,
Yeah. And I think that actually brings up a really good point. I think almost everyone I meet, like outside of the cocoon of this company that is interested in like spirituality, they only want to focus on the light. And there's this like denial of the shadow. And I think like we take it for granted here because like, or at least I do, because everyone here is so open about their shadow, at least compared to most people. And I think that that's something that you embody well, is like the shadow exists too, and it comes out and it's real. And most people I know who want to self-identify as spiritual, it's positive vibes only. You know, it's not dark, twisted vibes that come from a deep primal place that exists in humanity. You know, it's like, no, it's got to be light. It's got to feel good. I can't be challenged, you know? And I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm grateful to be around people that like, that is allowed.
it's necessary. It's like absolutely necessary. Like the rest is just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
You know, because then you hide the shadow from yourself. It's not even the hiding it from other people, but when you're hiding it from other people, you're typically hiding it from yourself, because you're going to be the strongest judge of all. Like nobody judges ourselves more harshly than ourselves.
Yeah.
And so if you identify as someone who's on the other side and has reconciled all their demons and blah, 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 and then when those things come up, you just ignore them. And then they grow stronger, because the more afraid you are that they're real, and the more, you know, and the less you look at them, the bigger the monster becomes, until the monster's really actually controlling you from the subconscious. And then that's a real fucking problem.
There's this great it's a book for children, and it's about like this family is just, you know, doing its family thing, and a small baby dragon is found by the kid in like his room. He goes to tell his parents, and his parents ignore him. Like they pretend like the dragon's not there, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it like, on the back of the dragon is the whole house, and the whole house is carried away. And then the parents finally start to acknowledge the dragon, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it gets fixed. And it's this really elegant, childlike story about the shadow, or about any problem in your life. Like some part of you sees it, knows it's there. And the way you make it worse is by not looking at it. It's by not talking about it, not being in truth with it, you know?
100%.
And it carries the fucking house away.
And then being able to love that part of yourself that's despicable, that part of yourself, and to acknowledge that it's yourself, and then send it love, like it just transmutes the whole thing. I mean, I came in the other day, like a week ago, kind of freaked out because I had a fucking crazy dream in the middle of the night. And and so I'm dreaming in the middle of the night, and I had a dream that this really kind of demonic presence was kind of coming after me. And I go, what do you want? And then through my own voice, I think I actually might have even vocalized it in my sleep, through my own voice, it goes, I want everything. As like the devil or darkness or the demon expressed. And I go, fuck. And I'm awake at this point. And I go, like, fuck, that was fucking gnarly. Because not only was it saying I want everything, but it came through as me.
Yeah.
This force of resistance that wanted to take all of my light and destroy it was actually a part of me. It wasn't external as it was initially in my dream. It came through me, which is fucking truth. Because all of that darkness isn't external. This whole idea of this external devil and external demons and possession, nah, that shit's in us. It's in us. So same with all the light and all the darkness. It's all in us. It's all creation, all of consciousness. The polarity of the whole thing is in us. So immediately I've known enough through my psychedelic journeys that I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge the parts of me that were in resistance, the parts of me that were denying my own light and denying my own love and holding me back and torturing me and preventing me from being who I was. And I acknowledge that as me. So I acknowledge that voice as an aspect of me, not as me, but just an aspect of me. And then I started to send that love, and I out loud was like, I love you, to that dark element inside me. And then the voice came back, and it got a little separation, didn't come through as me anymore. Got a little separation, and it goes, you think that's gonna work? And I just kind of like sat with it, like, yeah, I do actually. And then the voice goes, it always works. And started laughing.
Yeah.
And it was like this fucking crazy experience. And when the darkness started laughing, because I was sending it love, and it was just like the whole thing dissipated.
Yeah.
And because the whole thing dissipated, then I was able to get back to sleep, and like everything was cool. And I haven't been troubled by that at all. But if I had created the resistance where I thought, oh fuck, I'm possessed by some external force, there's some darkness in me, I got to get it out, I got to use a crystal extraction, get the burner and the pointed quartz, and we're going to pull this out of my stomach, and then we're going to take the crystal in the moonlight and we're going to cleanse it. Like, fuck that. That's a lot of work. And it's not going to work. It's so filled with fear. It's like, let me take the fear and put the fear in there, and then take the fear and then cleanse the fear. It's like fucking obsessing over the fear part, and just fucking send it love.
And it's not taking responsibility. Like what you did is keeping the responsibility in yourself, because you are all of it. The whole fear, or the whole crystal ritual that you laid out, is a great example of like how people don't take responsibility. Like they think that the crystal will do it, or that the day, or where the planet is that day, will do it. And those might have effects, but it removes the responsibility and the power from you to some external object that you don't have access to.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, man, is it's like the level that you are at, you must manifest a deeper shadow at each level to be the thing that gives you the resistance to go to the next level. And like, as you continue, it's just going to get stronger and stronger to meet you where you're at. And like, but that's the resistance force that, you know, helps you through what Jung calls the individuation process. Like the thing that's bringing you to the pinnacle of who you could be. Your greatest ally is really your rival, and it's the shadow in you, and it grows with you.
Yeah, no doubt. But there's a way that you can play them in harmony. You know what I mean? And I think that's, while the gravity and like the weight of it seems to be, I agree with you, grows. Like the disharmony that comes from like when it's early and you feel like it's different, and it's like now like both notes, like the bass and the drum and the flute can play together and make a song. And that's, I think, the area that I'm heading towards, is it's not that the thing disappears, but it's that everything has been reconciled in such a way, in such a holistic way, that it's all in harmony. And so it doesn't need, everything feels fed, everything feels loved, everything. And then I can just use my will and my choice to identify with what I want to identify with, and move forward that way. And I think that's the ultimately the goal, is to create harmony out of this chaotic polarity.
Absolutely. There's this kind of the fundamental idea of Jung, is that your psyche is this scattered like galaxy of complexes and memories and pieces of yourself. Like for most of us, we have like 20 different selves depending on who we're with and where we're at. And like each of us are being asked to go on a hero's journey. Like all of us are being asked to go on a adventure, and it's to organize our own psyche. And like, that means all the darkest shit, all the trauma that we've been through. And it's to bring it into like a sun, you know, like one thing that has a gravity in the middle that's stable, where all the pieces are playing their part. And that's the adventure that we all get to do. And, you know, it takes a lifetime.
Yeah. The hero's journey is just such a beautiful fucking metaphor.
Yeah, man.
And it's
the
like,
metaphor.
It is. And I think one of the helpful processes for anybody is, you know, I have a kind of a summary of the hero's journey that they actually use for different movie arcs and different things like that. Yeah. And I've actually put the ecstatic dance that we were able to do at the last mastermind.
So dope.
Like put that through 12 songs for each of these 12 steps. But I think it's really helpful to go through and take a look at that, and then kind of see where you're at.
Yeah.
Like, where are you in this journey? And I'll go through them real quick with you. So the first is ordinary world. This is kind of like you before you kind of wake up and realize like what's going on. It's you as a kid or maybe a teenager where like everything is just like face value.
You're unconscious.
You're unconscious. You know, you're just kind of cruising around, and then you get these kind of glimpses that start to happen. Like, what was that? You know, maybe it comes in this inspiration, this idea, or that point where you start to wake up, or maybe that first psychedelic experience, or that first kind of, you know, universal experience you had that helps you transcend this, you know, obsession with self, or whatever this moment is. And they call that the call to adventure.
Right.
Like the call to becoming who you really are.
The first moments of glimpses of consciousness. Because like as soon as you become conscious, you begin to recognize, oh my God, my whole fucking life before that has been this unconscious dance that I haven't cooperated
and you haven't really fully been in control of. It's been dictated by societal norms and pressures and your own subconscious urges and desires and fears and whatever.
Mom and dad.
Yeah. And all of these things. And you haven't really been fully living yet.
Right.
And then, but then what happens is you wake up, and then you realize how much work it's going to be, and how much,
and you say no,
and how difficult it is. And then there's step 3, which is the refusal. Like, fuck no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm out. Let me go back. Let me go back to sleeping. You know, let's drink a little bit. Let's hang out. Let's just pretend that this never happened. You know, and you'll see this happen on the micro level. Like when someone goes and does an ayahuasca experience, like they'll have this massive opening and expansion, but a good majority of the people I know, myself included at different times, will then go to a period of unconsciousness right afterwards. Like, it's so, you wake up to yourself to such a great degree that like the refusal comes immediately. Like, fuck that, let's drink. You know, and for some people that happens like on the plane flight home.
Whoa.
They're like, wow, that was like, let me start fucking hitting the wine immediately at the airport, even though you're not supposed to with dieta, but like, or they'll get home and they'll just like start partying for days. And it's just like, I need to forget this, because that is a lot of pressure, you know, because I saw a glimpse of what I could be and what I could do. And if I actually go for that, I might let the world down. I might let myself down. Let's cozy and snuggle back up into this unconsciousness.
And there's this brilliant, you know, it's a mythological motif, but it's this idea that, you know, God or Zeus or Odin or whatever can't reveal his true form to mortals because they'll burst into flames. And I think that's what our potential does. I think if you glimpse who you could be and you see it, you recognize that almost everything you are right now has to die. And people are like, fuck that. Give me the alcohol. Give me the blindfold. I'm not trying to burst into flames.
Yeah, totally. And it's the ego death, because we build these ego identity sandcastles. And, you know, when that consciousness comes, when you wake up, you realize it's a sandcastle, and that water comes in and it rushes through and it tears the whole thing down, and you realize none of that matters. And then you build it back up again. And that process, you know, is what actually helps us become who we are.
Yeah. Falling in love with the being of making the castles. Like, and if you think that the first castle you make is the one that's going to get you all the way, you're going to have a really boring, simple life. Like, get good and enjoy making new castles and just keep fucking killing them.
Truly. I mean, I literally killed my name. You know, like it was significant, and I was like, listen,
that's a different level.
I don't want to forget this shit. I don't want to forget everything that I just learned in this Iowa. I don't want to go back to who I was. I don't want to even be identified even audibly with that. I don't want the nomenclature of what other people call me to even be the same thing, because I'm not the same fucking person, and I refuse to be the same person. So I adopted my middle name, Aubrey, and just let Chris go.
Yeah.
And it's not like
bulldozed all the sand underneath the castle and fucking made a moat.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
No. And it's like, it's funny because there'll be some people, this is the most hilarious thing. Like, people who knew me while I was Chris, they'll like call me Chris. Like, it was like that makes them old school. And like my old homies, like, I'm going to still call you Chris because I knew you then. I was like, please don't.
Right.
Like, or just please be like respectful and nice of like what I would desire. Like, I get it. I remember being friends with you back in the day. You don't need to prove it to me. Like, I trust.
I remember. I was there.
Yeah. I was there. Like, you knew me as Chris. I got it. Yeah. You know, but now like I'm not that person anymore. So
that's because it makes them uncomfortable. Like, you were a supporting character to their movie and they don't want you to change.
Right. Yeah, they liked fucking Party Animal, sunglasses.
Vin Diesel with the XXX keychain. We will not share that with the public.
They like that guy. Yeah, so it's an interesting phenomenon. But yeah, that was a significant moment, and I think we continue to keep doing that.
And some people stay at that stage of the hero's journey until
refusal of the call,
right? Until like die. The midlife crisis fucks, or they die, and that's the true refusal, and you don't want to stay there.
Yeah. All right. So next step, meeting the mentor. So this could be any way, and I think a lot of people. Podcasts have been their mentor.
Absolutely. It was mine.
Like Rogan or whoever it is on the podcast has become this kind of surrogate a surrogate for a physical mentor.
For sure.
And it could be an author in a book, or it could be a physical mentor. It could be somebody who's like actually there in the flesh. It's actually been through at least a good stretch of the hero's journey.
Right.
And can help be like, hey, I see where you are. Keep
and really
going.
You just need them to be one step up beyond to help you like, dude, there's a fucking branch right there.
Yeah, exactly. And just someone, because we need this proof that it can be done.
Yeah.
We need to be able to see that like, oh, it's possible.
Yeah. And especially if you cultivate the ability to read, there are people from hundreds of years ago who may have had the exact same demons that you have, who have gone through all of it and then spent 10 years trying to write the best possible book they possibly could to help you through it. And like, there are so many dead geniuses who left their records.
Yeah.
Just go fucking find them and read them.
Yeah. Why you don't need to do it all on your own.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the beauty of the people who are, if you are willing to read and do the work and like listen to podcasts and find the ways, there's mentors everywhere. Like you don't need a special connection. You don't need a fucking apprenticeship with a spiritual master.
Right.
Like they exist in books.
I mean, that's
lectures.
dope, but
it's great.
You don't need it.
It's not necessary for that step, but just finding something to help guide you on the path. Yeah, for sure. 5, crossing the threshold. So this is kind of that moment of it's like, all right, I just fucking can't turn back anymore.
Right.
It's like when Caesar took his army back and crossed the Rubicon River to Rome, and it's just like, this is now civil war.
And that's actually the motif that's in most myths. It's about crossing a river. Like there's something, there's this crazy. So Robert Sapolsky, he studies apes, or he studies specifically baboons, I believe. And what happens is that when a baboon, like when a young, almost always male, is growing up inside of its core group, they'll start to go explore the border of their land, and it's always a river. And they'll like cross the river and start to flirt with the other group that's like a cross. And the strongest males are the ones that leave their troop for some reason. And it's always, the border is always a river. So I think there's something fucking deep and primal and old about the hero crossing a river to go do some unknown shit that the group that they grew up in would not ever cross. Like the risk is too high.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that river can be, in most of our lives, it's going to be metaphorical.
For sure.
Like what is that river? Maybe it is doing ayahuasca, or maybe it is just committing in a very deep way that you just can't go back anymore, and it's, you can do some great physical action, like the kind of classic burn the boats example, where you arrive at the shores of a new land and you burn the boat so you can't go home.
So savage.
Yeah, it's pretty savage. And it also shows that probably like you don't really trust yourself at that point.
Or your men. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, like knowing that there's no turning back, and that'll come naturally if you just stick with the course. You'll reach that point where it's like Caesar said, his famous line, "Alia jacta est," the die is cast. You threw the dice, and you can't go back and change anymore.
And it's wild, but it's like that thing inside of you, that voice, like it wants the hero's journey. And if you deny it, it will fucking.
Yeah. Try and stay at step 3, refusal to call. See what happens.
Suffer.
See what
antidepressants.
Happens. See what happens.
Overweight. Yeah.
Just disaster after disaster, trying to get you, okay, inspiration isn't working. How about desperation?
Right. Yeah.
How about we keep fucking you up until you actually answer the call. You know, that's just the way. And that's your higher self working in conjunction
Amen. Yeah.
with the universe. It's not like the universe doing this to you. Like, don't externalize this shit. This is the part of you that wants to grow and wants to be a hero more than anything, that
Right.
knows that that's the point of you being here in this life, is to be who you're fucking capable of, to live as a hero. That part of you is like, oh, if it needs to break your leg to get it through your fucking thick skull, it'll fucking break your leg. Like, good.
Absolutely.
You know, like, it just thinks in different terms. It's not that coddling, immediate comfort love. Like, oh, this is going to be a gnarly stretch for 3 years. But guess what? When she comes out of this, she'll be on the next step of the hero's journey. She'll know who she is.
It's the wisdom behind the cocoon, not the boy.
Exactly.
You know, like, it's the fucking cocoon. And I like to imagine that, like, who I could be is like an energetic entity that sits at the edge of my life. And it's like, it's magnetic. It wants me to become it. And it's smarter than me, and it will give me the ordeals that I need to overcome to become him. You know?
Brilliant. It's like a magnet. It's just
Exactly.
like sucking you towards that at all.
And really,
at
it's
all
love.
costs.
It's like, this is who you could be, man. You fucking scared, weak kid. Come.
Yeah. I love you where you are, but you can do more.
And that's exactly like, I think that's the right energy. Is like, who you are is okay on some high perspective level, but you could become so much more than what you are right now.
Yeah, exactly. And to appreciate that process. Don't get obsessed with who you could become.
Yeah.
Get obsessed with who you are at this moment, what you're capable of.
How do you
every
do the
fucking
becoming?
step of the way. You know, and know that that's the goal. And you know, from everything that I understand, you get multiple lifetimes to try and do it. So fucking just enjoy it a little bit too.
Yeah.
Step 6, you cross the threshold, tests, allies, enemies. You're in the fucking fight now, hero.
Yeah.
You're in the fight. You got some shit that's going to come up, always, whatever that is. And that's the time to brandish your sword, the sword of the soul of who you are, and fucking figure it out. How do you know yourself unless you test yourself?
Exactly. And the part there that I think really starts happening is that's when you start finding your tribe, like the people that you weren't born with, the people that don't share your blood, but the people who are trying to like solve the same world problems as you. That's when you start finding. And some people don't like the word tribe. Fuck it. I love the word tribe. Like, you start finding the people who are looking at the same star as you at night. You know, it's kind of a metaphor to think about this. But I think like once you cross the threshold, you start finding your brothers and sisters.
Yep. That energy will attract the like energy. You know, like attracts like. And so when you're on the quest, you'll find questers.
For sure.
You know, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Step 7, approach to the inmost cave, right? So this is where you start. This is kind of the boss battle. You're starting to get ready for that. And this is like going in, maybe not exactly the boss but this is like the labyrinth where the boss lives. You know what I mean? And you start to really explore the depths of who you are, the depths of your shadow, like what makes you tick, that trauma that might have happened, you know, that you're starting to unravel and go through. Like, what happened to me when I was a little kid? What is this about myself? Where is this jealousy coming from? Why do I feel like I need to do things to be worthy of love? Am I still trying to impress my father? Like, where that inmost area where the most work is going to get done.
Yeah, it's yourself has now seen that you are ready to start dancing with your shadow. And like the deepest, darkest part of your personality is like, you know, it's just going to show you like a pinky, like he's ready. You know, even though there's a whole fucking beast down there underneath the like dirt. But I think I think it's the first true test where it's like you could say no out of fear, you know, and then you kind of have to regress and start over, and maybe your allies
or maybe
help
you just stay stuck and test allies, enemies. It's the classic role-playing game analogy, right? Like,
absolutely,
I remember playing like Dragon Warrior, and like there was an area where you knew where you could go into the fucking cavern and the main dragon was there, but you had to stick around fucking fighting gold men and little blobs
and train
and get better weapons and find homies, and like, and if you went in there too early, you just get your fucking ass kicked.
Yeah.
You got murked and you get back, and you just keep playing. So like, if you're not ready for the inmost cave yet, cool. Build strength, build tools, build techniques, build strategies to help you, because this shit is going to get real in there. Like, this is not going to be easy. This is not going to be a fucking cakewalk. And everybody has that. Like, everybody has that part that they don't want to look at. That's really fucking gnarly. And that's part of the hero's journey, to make it through that shit.
Yeah.
and to hunt for it, but hunt for it, but not be so eager that you go diving in before you're ready. And if you do, fuck it. You'll have a little ego death and you'll get your ass kicked real quick, and then you'll know to come back there. Step number 8 is ordeal. So this is not just the cave, but this is the dragon at the end of the cave. This is where it's like you are literally face to face with, it's the boss battle.
Yeah.
It's like you're there. There's no backing out. You're fucking there. There's no gentle retreat from the cave, licking a few wounds.
Yeah.
You're kind of at this point now where you're fighting to the death. You've gone in and you've revealed enough of your trauma that you have an actually acute memory of it.
Right.
And you know that you have to confront the person who traumatized you, or, whatever it might be at that point.
Yeah.
There's no backing out. You're in it. You're in the fight, and you're in the fight, period. And you're either going to live or die. Like at that point, like not physically, but like emotionally, spiritually. Yeah. And that's, that is a place where, I think we've all, a lot of us who've been on the path, we found ourselves, and maybe a couple times in different ways, we find ourselves in that point. And it's a kind of a beautiful place to be in. It's hell
for sure.
But it's beautiful because it requires everything that you're capable of.
Yeah.
Like I've talked about this before. I only pray in the most extreme circumstances, like only in ordeal. I don't pray when I'm cruising through the cave.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, inmost cave. Cool.
Let's fucking do it.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
I'll bring a couple techniques, maybe some plants with me, I'll be like, oh, inmost cave. But at ordeal, it's like, fuck. Like, please God help.
Yeah.
And like that like, I need everything. I don't just need myself. I need like all my allies, all my spiritual allies, everything that I can possibly summon,
right?
Or I won't make it. That's when you're in the ordeal.
And what's really powerful, like the gold that you get from the ordeal, is that it shows you that there's a thing beyond you that is there to help you. That if you don't challenge yourself, you think that your ego will get you through shit. But there's a thing in your psyche that's much larger than you. You could call it God or a guardian angel or whatever fucking words work for you. But the ordeal destroys you so much that you kind of submit to that higher calling. Mm-hmm. There's a great story in Robert Greene's Mastery about Bucky Fullmeister or Minster, super fucking genius dude. He basically started a company, it failed, and he tried to kill himself. And he started walking into the ocean and he wanted to drown himself. And then he heard this voice, and his voice is like, you don't get to waste this life. You have gifts that you have to give people, and we're going to help you do it, basically is what happened. And there's this motif in people who try to commit suicide or who get to a point where they're completely overwhelmed, that's the first time in their life that they hear the voice. Like there's something in the psyche that wants to come in and help when the ego has been humbled enough to recognize that it can't do it by itself.
I think that's absolutely right. It's a surrender to who you really are.
Yeah.
It's surrendering your ego and those things that you thought were tough and those things that you thought were strong, those areas where you thought like, I'm a badass.
Right.
It's surrendering all of those and going like, those are nothing. The truth of who I am, like love itself, is the strength, and that's universal. And I just get to carry a piece of that oneness, and it's surrendering to that ultimately gets us through the ordeal. We think it's strength of arm, but it's not. It's this willingness to let go.
Yeah.
Let go to become the ultimate, irrepressible force, which is the divine expressed as us and through us. And that's really what the ordeal will do.
Yeah. Like what I have found when in psychedelics I get to the most traumatic, painful parts, is the thing that gets me through is to love and to accept.
100%.
Like I love and I accept, like having the courage to look at it and not to look away, and then to love, like that happened, And
then you get the gold.
Yeah.
It's step 9, the reward, seizing the sword. This is the point where, having surrendered all that you thought made you strong, but actually made you weak, every aspect of the ego, having surrendered all that to the truth of who you really are, then you have a newfound power and a newfound understanding of who you are. And you've been tested, and you know that, and you've put it through the battle. And so, it's King Arthur being able to wield Excalibur intelligently now, like, oh, I know who I am and I know what my power is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know what my soul, I am my soul. And at that point, that only comes on the backside of that ordeal, which forces you to shed all of those other things.
Yeah. And I think the real nitty gritty pragmatic takeaway from having these type of experiences is like, if you have the capacity to look at the worst thing that's ever happened to you and like to love it, it puts everything in your daily life into a perspective that just completely changes your entire life. Like anything that happens with a coworker or a lover or a parent, it pales in comparison to whatever that experience was that happened in the cave. And the thing that got you through the cave was love and acceptance. And it works everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It works everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's Excalibur. It cuts every enemy.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. What you learned specifically applies to all things.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a famous Miyamoto Musashi quote
Yeah.
as well. You know? Yeah. All right. Then you head back. You know,
Bring the treasure home.
you got to bring the treasure home and recross that threshold to dive back into ordinary life and start to be the hero and be that example for everybody else. That's step 10. Number 11, which is interesting, which is kind of like that kind of final, it's almost like this final test that comes, I call it resurrection, this one. And it's that moment where there's that one last thing that kind of comes at you. Like, are you really ready? Like when you come back home and cross the threshold, that one final real challenge. And you'll see it played out in movies. That would be probably where, you know, Odysseus is back home and shoots the arrow through the axes and has to do the final thing.
Right.
You know, where he could get killed by the guards or some, you know, some issue like that. It's that final moment where he's all the way back, almost there, and he has to actually show up, not in the old patterns. You know, like it's like me coming back to all my friends who knew me as Chris and still saying, hey, I know all you guys know me as Chris and you want to see me that way, but I'm still Aubrey.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's that final test where you've made it all the way back. You've crossed back the threshold, but you get that final test. Like, are you really who you say you are?
Yeah.
You know, are you really ready for that?
Right. It's the test that matters, in that it's the test that's in the real world again.
It's back in the real world. You're
Yeah.
out of the cave. You're out of the ordeal. You're back, cross the threshold to the ordinary world again.
Yeah.
And in the ordinary world, can you be who you are?
Right.
Can
And
you be
that's
reborn?
integration. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you be reborn as this thing that you were, or was that just in play? Exactly. It's integration. Like, was this just your ayahuasca self?
Right.
Do you got to be in the jungle wearing your
Absolutely.
fucking mala beads
Yeah.
and fucking taking flower baths to be that guy? Or could you be that guy, you know, back at work? Could you be that guy
Absolutely.
when you go back home for Thanksgiving with your family? Like, can you be that person when you're back there in the real world?
And that's the hardest test. Like,
There's a hard test.
there's like this amplification that when you're in the cave, it's like, I get to be a fucking hero now.
yeah,
But
sure.
it's when you have to come home and the environment is the way that it used to be.
Nothing has changed except for you.
You have to be the instrument that plays at a higher tune.
And hold the higher tune even when all the other instruments are playing at that
And
lower
they're pissed
vibration.
that you're changing the fucking music.
Yeah. And then until they aren't.
Right.
Until they're like, hey, I like that.
It wakes them
I
up.
like that sound. You know, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
And when you're able to do that, that's when you've returned with the elixir. That's when you've brought the medicine truly home that's going to change the world. So going back to what we were saying first, this is about being first. And then when you're being,
Right.
then you're actually causing the effect that you need. You need to be the hero. And that is the elixir. That is the medicine. You know, it's not actually the ordeal and the slaying of the dragon and like, great, good job. Did all that stuff. But the important part of that is it made you who you were, because you had to surrender every aspect of you that you weren't.
It helped you see or
Helped
remember,
you see.
you know?
And tested it. You know, like, you don't know. You won't get to that point unless you have to get to that point.
Right.
Like, you can do it in a million ways. Like in a sweat, that's one of the reasons why I love Sweat Lodge. Like at a certain point in Sweat Lodge, your breathing techniques, your mindfulness, your toughness, all of that shit will fail.
It's burned away.
Like all of that shit will fail. What you have left is prayer and like surrender. And then you realize how strong you are at that. Like, oh, okay, I can make it through this. And it's a very emotional, cathartic process because you're shedding all of these things that you thought made you tough.
All the tools you thought you knew.
Yeah, all the things that, and those are all great. You can pick them all back up. But ultimately, like, at the extremes,
Yeah.
when you're at door 4 and it's hot as fuck and you've been in there for hours and you're uncomfortable and it's, like that's when you need the tools. And so that's like a microcosm of the hero's journey. Like
Absolutely.
go from ordinary world into this place, which is like the cave, and then emerge back out with the medicine. And the more you do this, you can have these micro heroes journeys, like an ayahuasca session or like a Temazcal or sweat lodge. And then you have these macro ones, which is encompassing your whole life.
Right.
But it all follows this arc. And the more you practice it in the micro, the better you'll be at, following through.
It hones Excalibur. Yeah, like
exactly.
these micros. And that's why I think intelligent psychedelic experiences, and I'll speak on my behalf and not on yours, is something that I think is like a go-to blade polisher. Like, and a lot of people will get the sword and then kind of start being they want to cut everything, or they're doing too much, because there's this idea that only draw the blade when you need it, yeah.
Well, also like there's a point where you're over sharpening.
Yeah.
And you're actually going to either break or dull your sword.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a process to that. And you see that all too often where it's just like, and it's also in some ways it's a refusal to return home. Like they just want to stay in the cave. They want to stay in this like mythical world, non-ordinary world. And they just want to stay there because they can be a hero. And then in the astral, they can kick ass and they can make friends with allies and they could, do all of these different things. But can they bring it home?
Yeah.
And so if they're staying there in that space, just constantly, then they're going to get less and less grounded. And it's going to be harder and harder and harder for them to cross the threshold back home and actually return with the elixir.
That's a great point.
And they're not recovering enough. So they're over sharpening their blade. Sometimes they'll just crack their blade and you'll see these like fucking cracked souls.
Yeah.
And that's the hazard with that. It 100% is a tool, but it's a tool that used correctly hones your soul, used incorrectly can dull it or damage it.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. A lot of people don't want to do that last test, which is to come home and to do it where it's not as sexy, but it's like, it doesn't seem as sexy to some of the people on the journey, but it's for sure the most important.
100%. It makes it real.
Yeah.
Makes it grounded in life. And that's what causes the change. That's what causes the positive effect. Like, you don't like, what is the purpose of medicine if it's not served? Like you gotta eventually serve the medicine. That's a meme, guys. Yeah. Like you gotta serve it to the people. You can't just hold it all yourself or it's no longer medicine. Mm-hmm. And serving it may just be being around people. It's not even about doing anything. It's just like being at that vibration around ordinary people and seeing them and not being separate from them and being like, hey, look, here's me like a little bit ago. And then you get to be that mentor and you get to be that force that they get to look to like, oh, I see you. That's awesome. You're just right now hearing the call to adventure.
Right.
Like, isn't that fucking cool?
Yeah.
I've
never resonated with the stories of the monks that go off and just like do their thing alone. I feel like that's missing the point. I think the point is do your hero's journey and then bring back the light, and like show as many people as you can and spend the rest of your life keeping your light attuned, because that's always a process, but then showing the greatest number of people who want to see it how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Go be a monk for a while to hone yourself and then go back and move to a city and start interacting with people and just keep all your weird rules about you can't touch females and whatever other crazy things you've had to use to keep yourself in monkdom. Shed that and then test yourself in that way and see if you can still hold that vibration and still carry that thing. I mean, I get it in some regards because there's like a very kind of metaphysical morphic resonance. They're holding this vibration
I've heard
even
that
though
too,
they're not touching any. Okay, like I get it. Maybe there's some of that stuff going on, but like ultimately it's not going to be nearly as powerful as if you're interacting with the individuals in the physical.
For sure.
And they're actually getting to encounter that. It's like it's a whole other level. Like giving a hug to Don Miguel Ruiz is awesome. If you like prevented, like that was a recalibrating moment for me because I was like, oh my God, this dude who I've read in the books, which is great. I love reading his books, very helpful. But to see him living it and to like feel that expressed, like that made a shift.
For sure.
For me, that means like, oh, it is possible to have a completely different waking vibration. And I wouldn't have known that if he would have just stayed a recluse and just pushed out books. At least he was pushing out books.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, at the very least, but books and his presence, whoa, double medicine. Good job.
Absolutely. And it might make you uncomfortable to hear this, but that's how I feel about like reading your shit and now coming and working here. Like you embody it, and it's a different type of information being given off than just books.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I do my best. I'm always constantly baffled at like how many times I have to wake up.
For sure.
Like how many times I can operate with massive delusions.
26 times since I met you.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
At least. And like, it's just a wild thing. And I'm sure I'll get into this whenever me and Whitney jump on a podcast and talk about open relationship. But I think one of the dangers that you can have, especially for someone like me, is there's not a lot of people doing open relationships. So I'm like one of the kind of the experts
For sure.
around, you know, that topic. So when you're an expert and you're talking about it, you're talking about dealing with jealousy and you're talking about handling all that, then you can become blind to actually realizing like, oh shit, I'm not actually walking the walk at all. I'm completely fucked up right now, you know, and I'll have these moments like, wow, I was just suppressing all of this jealousy and I was creating separation because I wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge that I was being a jealous little bitch. And that's really the fucking bottom line of this whole thing. But instead I was creating this whole complicated fabrication of reasons why we needed to create emotional separation, blah, blah, blah. When really it was just me not being able to look at my jealousy because I thought to myself, no, I got this shit. I figured it out. I'm writing about it. I'm talking about it. I got this shit.
Yeah.
And then you get these moments like, oh shit, I don't have this shit. I got to start at the beginning and let go of all my specialness and all my things. Say, I'm back to step one, dealing with jealousy. Let's see if I can get back to that very first step.
There's this idea that Jung talks about. He wrote the foreword to a book by one of his most prominent students. And he basically talked about like, if you're the explorer of a new part of the human condition, like you get there first, but you get to be the one who stumbles over and over and over and over and over because you're the first torch in that part of the forest. And the people behind you will have such an easier time, but you kind of don't get to choose. Like you're one of the explorers in this part and you're going to stumble. And because you already have eyes on you, we will all get to see it too. but that's a part of the role of being one of the first people in that part of the territory, you know? So I appreciate you stumbling the fuck around because it's going to help us.
Yeah. Just try to not light too many fires when you stumble with your torch.
Yeah. And don't light yourself on fire. Like it's okay to fuck up.
Yeah. And forgive yourself quick, you know, and that open relationship field guide that we're putting out and that'll be out soon. You know, I think that's going to be and people look for that. It won't be out at the time that this releases probably, but it'll be out soon. That's one of the key things. Cause if you don't forgive yourself for that, then you just stay stuck and you stay in denial and unwillingness to acknowledge truth. Going very back to the beginning of the podcast, like one of the most important things is just being in truth with yourself.
That you're human.
That you're human. You're going to fuck up. You're going to make a ton of mistakes. Be in truth with that and forgive quick. And that'll accelerate you on the path.
Absolutely.
Man, that was a pleasure.
Same.
Appreciate that.
Truly.
Obviously, a lot of people can interact with Erick through my channels, but also you got, what do you got now? You kind of paused your podcast, right?
I kind of so everything I was working on before I got here, it's been in a coma for 6 months. It's still in a coma, but it's not completely dead. But I have a podcast called the Meta Programming Podcast. Aubrey doesn't like that name, but we'll think about it. And I have an Instagram. It's just my name.
Cool.
That's basically it.
Appreciate everybody. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, fam. Peace.